Thank you to everyone that's joining. This is a topic that I am very passionate about, so we're going to jump right in. Let's talk about what total talent management really means. What total talent management means when it's been implemented, it actually allows you to look at your entire enterprise-wide process for how you obtain talent. And this also includes the technologies that you obtain talent or use to obtain talent. It allows you to kind of solve the problem of your talent needs by deciding how to best fill the role. You're really looking at contingent as well as your independent contractors, as well as your regular recruiting management systems. So whether you're looking for full-time talent, contingent, freelancers, independent contractors, or even dealing in the SOW space, it allows you to look at all the talent that's available and actually choose the best fit for the job that you have open. We do kind of want to understand who we have on the call today. So we do have a quick poll. We'd like to understand what kind of labor do you have today? What kind of labor are you managing? Is it full-time permanent or is it contingent non-permanent? Okay. So it looks like on the phone, we're looking at 88% of full-time permanent and about 17% of contingent or non-permanent. Okay, so we have a good mix on the phone. Great. Let's talk about why total talent is important. So we mentioned before, this approach to talent management looks at your entire workforce. So each group, whether it's traditional or non-traditional, provide valuable services and should be seen as an asset within your company. So when you group them together and look at them as a total group of talent, it allows you to view your current capabilities that you already may have in-house or contingent and determine the best type of resource required to fill your position. And this allows you to create scalability and a more agile workforce. As time moves on, you will start hearing more about the flexible workforce. And this is just what total talent does. That's why it's important. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the goal of total talent management. The whole goal is to create a talent ecosystem within your company. It would help you solve on-demand workforce products and allow you to attract, hire, and retain the top talent. This allows you to work with HR and procurement together to build an integrated workforce. Some of the objectives that you obtain by looking at this integrated workforce is cost savings. And when you look at cost savings, this allows you to build internal talent pools. It allows you to identify your workers quickly, redeploy contingent workers. If someone has reached their threshold as a contingent worker, it could be no cost for that candidate to come on. It allows you to provide a home for your silver medal panelists. So if you have a candidate that you've been interviewing, you take the top. There were 3 others that you interviewed that might be great for the role. This allows you to put them in the talent pool, keep them warm and track them. And later, if there is a contingent opportunity open, they may be someone that can fill that role as well. It also will help you with risk mitigation. So if you're looking at the total talent properly, you have them assigned to the categories and you have access to all their job descriptions and what their pay is. It also helps you make sure that you have all the proper documentation for all of your candidates working on site. And then also it helps fill your skill gap. We all know the skill gap is real. It allows you to create talent pools, allows you to curate the talent on a larger basis of applicants. And again, it's kind of a home for that possible silver medalist and let them stay warm and be considered for contracted positions or other perm positions as you move along in your hiring process. Okay, we got one more poll we want to ask on the phone. Do you have a present talent strategy that's integrated? So we want to know now if we already have people on the phone that are connecting all the dots and all of talent acquisition is talking to each other, meeting with each other. Great. That's great. 50 right down the middle. So it sounds like a lot of you have already started hearing about total talent management. You're looking at ways to close the skill gap, looking at cost savings. That's great. All right. So total talent management, it takes everyone being involved: HR, procurement, your talent acquisition team, your contingent team. So where do you start? We like to look at it in 3 different categories. We think it starts with people. You also need to bring in your technology, and then you need to be able to find success through reporting and looking at what those success matrix look like. So the whole goal is to bring them all together. This can be complex and challenging for even the most agile companies. So how do you begin? Let's look at how we mix people, technology, and define success. The first we'll look at is people. First of all, you need to introduce each other. You need to know who the key players are. They all need to be invited to the table to discuss how you're going to look at total talent, how you're going to interact with each other, and how you're going to integrate so that you can start developing your on-demand workforce. So definitely introduction, have calls, start talking to each other. If you don't know each other, introduce yourselves to your total talent team. Then next, you're going to want to make sure you're communicating on a regular basis, whether that's a cadence call, it's email groups, that sort of thing. Just getting the people together, inviting everyone to the table, and communicating about how each person is important to the strategy to achieve the total talent acquisition team. Next, you're going to want to meet and talk about capabilities. What kind of capabilities do you have on your team? Understand what each department does, what each person within that department does, what type of technologies are being utilized. How can they integrate? Where's our duplication of effort? So again, we're introducing each other, we're starting to communicate, and then we're assessing where each person belongs and how they can bring something to this strategy plan. Next, you're going to want to create an action plan. So we always look at it as you want to inspect what you expect. So you want to sit down and actually, what does our action plan look like? Let's pick one area to focus on. Is there low-hanging fruit that might have a large impact and create success right away? Create milestones, create check-ins and timelines. And then also after that, you want to be able to define the assess. When you create your action plan, don't forget to define the outcomes that are important and how you measure it and how you take it to leadership and what that looks like and what success looks like. Also, technology. Technology plays a huge role in talent acquisition today. We know that there are probably lots of tools in your talent acquisition team that you're using. You can start with vendor management. So vendor management is the management and the tool and technology that manages your contingent labor. Some of that times can be from rec to check, starting with the requisition all the way to actually paying your contingent workers, or it could just be a requisition system and an engagement system. But you want to know what you have available in the technology for your vendor management system. Next, when you're looking at talent acquisition, you may be looking at several different technologies that may be deployed. There could be an ATS, your applicant tracking system, which is more of your electronic applicant repository. It kind of pushes workflow automation. Sometimes it can be used as a compliance tool by your recruiters and hiring managers. And then you have RMS, or may have RMS integrated with ATS. This allows you to make the hiring process more efficient. It creates the efficiencies in hiring process by using the data analyst tools and customer relationship features. So it may have a tracking component, or you may integrate with the actual applicant tracking system. Some of you may be using a CRM, so the candidate relationship management tool. That's very powerful, and it automatically kind of nurtures the talent and delivers engaging experiences. It helps you keep your passive candidates alive and keeping them in an active job seeking position. So this is also a good place where you might look at your silver medalists. So you have interviewed, like we talked about before, 3 different candidates. You have 2 other people that interviewed. You think they'd be a good fit for the culture. this may be a great place to store them. And then also you may have a learning management system. So often our customers create content. This helps job learning, strengthening your team members' abilities and knowledges throughout the employee life cycle, helps them perform at a high level and feeling equipped to do their jobs. So you kind of want to understand how all these works. And then, and more importantly, can they be integrated? Can you integrate the tools together? I was speaking to one client recently who has an applicant tracking system. And one of the tools that they actually implemented was a flag, so that when somebody applies to a job, either in their ATS or their RMS, it asks them, would you actually consider working in a contingent job if we had one available that suits your needs? And then they integrate with their VMS technology, and that candidate loads into a talent pool and allows the contingent worker to look at somebody that you already interviewed, you already like their skill set, and it gives them an opportunity to come in the company maybe another different way. So kind of having that flag that flags that person to say, hey, we could use you in contingent, and that helps you in your recruiting. And a lot of times when you have a vector or a VMS system, you can actually use a payroll vendor. And that's a reduced markup because you've done the recruiting yourself. So when you have all the technologies integrated together, it does help with operational efficiencies and recruiting efficiencies. Next, let's talk a little bit about what success looks like. So the whole point of the total talent acquisition is to become on-demand talent, finding we have this job opening, we're going to look at the whole total talent pool and look to see who best fits the job and what's the best way to bring them into our company. Now that we've done that and we're looking at all the talent that's available to us and we're deciding how to best fill the jobs, let's look at what type of metrics makes success. Is it process and spend visibility of all talent? So now you're looking at all of your permanent talent. You may be looking at your freelancers, your contractors, the contingent labor, and you're able to see all the spend within your total talent. That also helps you with forecasting quarterly, forecasting yearly, looking what you spend in your VMS combined with your total talent. It also can tell you this is the actual cost that it actually takes to hire someone and have them started within our company. Is it using it for a direct hire and sourcing? We talked about the sourcing on demand, having those silver medal candidates in line so that you can possibly pick them for a separate job, a contingent job, but looking at the talent that you own already. Then cost containment. Does that save time and money? Does it drive efficiencies? And then what does it do to our time to hire? Now that we have these talent pools and we're able to look internal to fill our jobs, how much time are we saving? How much time is it actually taking us to fill our positions? And with the skill gap right now, that's key. I can see that that would drive efficiencies. And then creating internal talent pools. So again, looking inward, you're able to stack the talent. If you have a hard to fill position and you have one opening and you had 5 resumes, being able to take those other 4 candidates and redeploy them back into the talent pool and possibly in your RMS to keep them warm and talk to them about open positions at a later date. So I think we've given the overview of what total talent management is, what its goal is, how do we define it, how do we look at our people, how do we start, how do we measure our technology, how do we make our technologies integrate. We've looked at some of the supporting reporting and success matrices. So the whole conclusion of total talent management can create a program that allows you to change your talent acquisition landscape. And it allows you to learn about how you find talent, where the talent is, what the pay is, how long it takes to get them hired. Those are all valuable insights. They're gained and they can assist in making better informed decisions on how you approach your talent integration, diversity, demand management, and the oversight. So I'm happy to open it up for questions you may have.
Well, Cindy, thank you so very much for that, that perspective on total talent acquisition and really looking at this from a holistic perspective. We do have a couple of questions that I'd love to really flesh this out a little bit. So
Okay.
perhaps you could start us out with really linking the idea of human resources and procurement. Can you give a couple of different examples to help highlight how these two disciplines can marry together and work together?
Yeah, so I think typically what we saw in the past as a VMS technology, usually procurement was the buyer. They wanted to drive cost savings and they wanted to control the contract. So typically in the past, it's been procurement that will go out and actually look for a technology or a VMS system. And that's whether or not they do an actual technology or they also employ a master vendor as well, or an MSP to run the program. So typically the contract level has been at the procurement team. And then as we implement and talk about classifying workers and that sort of thing, locations, project codes, and how we're going to actually look at the implementation or how it's set up, we'd work with HR. Now what we're seeing is procurement and HR sit at the table together and they want to talk about how all these systems they already have can integrate and talk to each other. So we are seeing human resources kind of sitting at the table with procurement because it's not all about cost savings anymore. We know that there is a skill gap, there's a talent shortage. The way people want to work is very different than it has been in the past. So HR has valuable insights to that. And they're not always solely looking at where can we find cost savings? They're looking at where can we fill the skill gap? Where can we get the best worker? How can we get them on the quickest and get them implemented into our systems and out to work? And now they're starting to partner more with procurement. Procurement may still run the contract of bringing in or integrating a technology that has to do with talent acquisition, but HR is the one that kind of has the valuable insight of how the talent's going to be received.
Absolutely, Cindy. And to that end, I think you're really making the case over the last 5 years, the role of HR at the table has changed so dramatically. And I know you're alluding to that. What can we further do to continue to see and maybe even elevate the value of HR at the table in support of total talent acquisition?
Yeah, I think it goes back to where do you begin? You start by communicating, you start understanding who the players are at the table. A lot of times what happens is you see kind of silos, HR's in a silo, procurement's in a silo, and then contingent's kind of always been in its silo. It's always kind of been, if you think about it, for the last, maybe not in the last 5 years, but before that, it was more of, oh, we need scalability. So we'll bring in a VMS and we'll look at temporary talent to fill some key roles here and there. But they weren't integrating them into the workforce. So I think just knowing who all the players are and breaking down the silos, and procurement's always, their job is always going to be to save money and to push contracts and make sure they're getting the best deal, they're getting the best technology. But HR is on the front lines every day. They're out there witnessing the talent shortage and how hard it is to fill key roles. And then when you fill key roles, now we have to look at, is everybody going to be virtual and how are we going to set them up? So I think it's just understanding that each have a place at the table and start that communication, introducing yourselves, talking about what you're looking for in technologies, or meeting with those teams and saying, we now want to integrate. We want to bring recruiting management together with applicant tracking, and we want to bring VMS in that as well. Going to your procurement team and saying, hey, we see an opportunity to drive efficiencies, to save costs, to mitigate risk. We need you to help us kind of plan this out, what this looks like with the contracts that we have today and what we're going to look like going forward. So I think it's just that simple, breaking down the silos and all becoming one team to drive the talent acquisition strategy.
Absolutely. And you're so right. This is certainly a team sport. It's not,
right.
It's not all on HR. To that end, we all certainly have a short list of who should sit at the table. In your expertise and in your experience, who should be at the table, and particularly who are the audiences that oftentimes don't make it to the table that oftentimes are really needed?
Yeah, I think obviously we've got procurement and HR, and I guess it just depends on how you're looking at your recruiting and talent acquisition. I think anybody that plays a role, HR generalists, HR managers, HR VPs, procurement, and then the recruiters themselves, they're valuable. They're valuable. They're the ones listening to what the candidates are saying, or they're listening to what the candidate says. Hey, I went into your technology, and just so you know, I tried to upload my resume, it took 6 times. So those recruiters are valuable as well, because they're listening to they're working on the technology on a daily basis. They are acting and interacting with the candidates. So I think the whole kind of talent acquisition and HR team, so that's the recruiting staff. If you have a learning silo within your business, they also should come to the table. You really want it to be a seamless flow. And then I think sometimes you forget that you may need somebody from technology there. So someone from, whether it's the technology themselves and then bringing their expert to the table, or someone in your company that's responsible for the actual technology and how it's implemented and how it's improved along with the time. They definitely need a seat at the table. They're the ones that can tell you, hey, can we integrate these? So if we, is there an integration that we could put into VMS for all administrative executive assistants? We want to make a talent pool for those within the VMS. It's the technology people. They're going to be able to tell you how that gets done, and how quickly it can get done, and what kind of efficiency it can drive. And once it's there, what happens to it? So I think you've got your technology experts that actually are in the tools, working on the tools, possibly a representative from the application that you're working with, your HR department, your total talent acquisition team, down to recruiting, really need to be at the table. And then I think there is later on in a place for your project management team, because this is a project. It's not something you're going to do in a month or 2 months. Even the most organized, agile companies struggle with getting the concept that the world of work's changing. We all have to be one cohesive team that get the best talent that's out there. So eventually, I think you'll need to bring in some type of project management, someone that can hold a third party who doesn't have maybe a stake in the game, that can actually manage all the communication that needs to happen. There's going to be a lot. Most of the clients we work with have 3 or 4 talent acquisition tools. And that's a lot of people that are doing a lot of different things and trying to get everyone to think like-minded. So don't rule out your PMO department coming in and helping you manage the product.
That is such a great point, Cindy. One of the things that I routinely see in organizations is this, oftentimes the audit of how are our processes working becomes
Right.
an event rather than a process. And you're really alluding to the fact that this isn't just a project. It can't just be an event. It has to be a process. One of the things that oftentimes we tend to see is this sort of bifurcation of, okay, let's pulse our recruiters, let's pulse our talent acquisition team, and then we do it annually. But to your point, the world of work is changing so rapidly. We need a different cadence for that, right? We need to be able to have all of the stakeholders at the table at a regular interval so that we can make sure that we are keeping up with the changes in the macro environment. So to that end, what are some ideas that you have for doing that, for better involving those that are on the front lines when oftentimes decision makers can be very siloed? What have you seen work?
Yeah. Again, I think it starts with leadership. So I think you need to look for an executive sponsor, someone who can actually, for lack of a better word, kind of be the command center to bring all these tools together. So I think having an executive sponsor is going to be key. A lot of our organizations are still kind of that top down, and they bring instant credibility to an idea or a possible new way to look at ideas. And I think that is probably the most important aspect to getting this started. And then it's just holding each other accountable. When you have total talent, you kind of become your own little microorganism, and everybody, there's so many moving parts. And when you have moving parts like that, it's easy for things to get missed, to be overlooked. So that executive sponsor is kind of the person that pulls it all together. And if you can have them on the calls, and you can give them constant updates, and you have your project manager involved to kind of see where you're flowing. And then you're coming back and you're looking at your wins and you're celebrating your wins. Then I think it builds more opportunity for this to continue and to become the true total talent management.
Thank you so much, Cindy. You make such a great point here. We know that in any change management initiative or any key process, the sponsor plays a significant role in the likelihood of success for that particular process or initiative. And so really getting your sponsors well defined and getting them actively involved becomes so critical. The thing I'd like to kind of wrap us on is, you alluded to the world of work changing. We've talked about this sort of top-down mentality. How can sponsors work, and what are some specific actions that they can take to create more of a bi-directional bottom-up and top-down flow in this process of total talent acquisition?
Well, I think we're kind of all, instead of looking top down or bottom up, it's kind of look across. And that's the whole point, is you want to look across all the different players in talent acquisition and bring them together to have one team. You're kind of all in it together. If you all don't agree that this is the best strategy, and you don't see the operational excellence it can bring and the efficiencies it can bring, and the fact that you're going to be able to hire your own internal talent. You're not always going to have to go outside to recruit. You've got these internal talent pools, and it actually increases your time to fill. I mean, there's nothing worse than sitting there looking at a job that's been open for a month and you can't fill it. No one wants to tell their management that, and the person that actually needs the worker to produce the work doesn't necessarily always accept that very well. They may not know the same, they may not have the same pulse on talent that a recruiter or someone in talent acquisition does. So I think it's kind of looking across, and it's even, you're all suppliers of talent, and it's understanding what each person does, and that you're all in the same class to be able to make the company agile to hire the right workers. That's how you win. And you hold each other accountable, and one is no more or less than the other. You're all keepers of talent or learning or something that has to do with the culture of your workplace. And we all know today, they've done tons of studies saying, what's the most important object at work to you? What do you care about? And money was always a big driver. Well, now you're starting to hear it's culture. It's from the minute you approached me about an open job, how was I treated? What was the interview process like? Did it feel warm? Is it a company I'd want to put my name on? So everyone being like-minded and coming across and looking across total talent as one arm of the company, I think is what will take it to be successful.
What a great capstone there, Cindy. Great message that not only to look across the business, but really this is about a diametric shift in the mindset, in the way that we view talent acquisition and total talent management, that it's everybody's responsibility, not
yes. Yep.
Not just one party's. And over time, those stepping stones will come together to create the kind of cultural shift that really candidates and employees are hungry for, and is slowly becoming, as you've alluded to, the new paradigm. So we are so grateful to have had you here today.
Well, thank you.
Cindy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your perspective, your experience on this topic. We're grateful to have such an extended period of time for Q&A with you today. Before I go ahead and wrap us, any final capstone thoughts?
No, I think this is it's a passion project, and I think that's kind of how the way you have to look at it. It's not always going to be easy. It's not going to be smooth, but if you bring the right players to the table, break down the silos, and agree that how important this is, and you really see how it can affect your culture of your company, the quality of your hire, I think everybody wins.
I couldn't have said it better myself, folks. That's Cindy Chun, Senior Program Manager with Vector VMS. Cindy, we're so glad to have had you here today with us. Thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Absolutely. To our members here, thank you all for joining us today. We want to remind you of a few things. Your webcast today has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, as well as for HCI recertification. And your credits for attending our webcast here today will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. And while you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on those certifications, virtual conferences, premium membership, and more. In closing, I just want to say one more thank you to the good people at Vector VMS. And Cindy, thank you again. We're so privileged to have had you here with us today. And
Thank you.
Yes, and I'd also like to thank you, our webcast viewer. Thank you for spending the hour with us. Cindy, thank you for spending the hour with us. We'll see you next time.